As an immigrant, you're not allowed to give up. That's how mindset I had. I'm not I have to suffer through this. That's how I felt in the beginning. If I would fail, if I would drop out of college after 2 years, that would mean I failed my parents for moving to this country when they barely spoke English, when they spent all their entire money to come to this country. Honestly, as an immigrant, you're always like exactly how you were saying, like you're either a lawyer, doctor, or embarrassment to your family, right? We had that similar thing, and I was always compared by my cousins or my family members how they're doing. If you didn't make it to that, or if you didn't go up beyond that, like what are you doing with your life? But you don't know what you're doing. You have to find your crowd and your people, and you have to talk about what you're facing. Be vulnerable with them, and I think having that in my life has really helped me to be all vocal about it. I'm like, oh wow, I'm not the only person who's been going through this. There are so many other people, and we share the same thing. Yes, can we fix it? Maybe not, but can we talk about it and learn from it and be very conscious of it? Yes.
Turn this up. Turn this up. Your professional development is one of the keys to your career success. When you combine your desire to grow with actionable steps, your journey to success becomes an incredible reality.
Hi, I'm Paul Foranbi, and welcome to Incredible Paul Leadership, where we learn how to become the most incredible versions of ourselves by learning from each other. Today, I have the honor of having Dr. Sana Naseem on the show. She's a Muslim American and postdoctoral fellow at Boston Children's Hospital and Harvard Medical School. I had the opportunity to hear her speak on a panel during the 2023 LSMRC conference, and I knew I had to have her on the show. So that was just a brief introduction about you and how I got to learn about you, but introduce yourself the way you would do it.
Thank you so much, Paul, for having me. So as you said, my name is Sana. I am a postdoctoral fellow in the vascular biology program at Boston Children's Hospital. So I have double appointment with the Boston Children's Hospital and the Harvard Medical School. And I am just finishing up my third year, going into my fourth year,
Wow.
and hopefully going into academic world. My goal is to become a professor. I want to have my own lab. I'm really passionate about mentoring, so we can talk about that at some point. I I really admire, like, I learned a lot more from young people than they probably learn from me when they're like when I'm mentoring them. So it's like a really bi-directional
Yeah.
relationship, and I think that's something that really motivates me to become a professor and have my own lab.
No.
I'm doing science too.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. We can talk more about it right now with mentorship and mentoring young people. So was there kind of a moment that maybe where you experienced mentorship or you want to start mentorship, or how did this kind of journey in mentorship start for you?
So I started back in when I was an undergrad. So kind of going back, step a little back. I came to United States when I was 17 years old. So just within 2 years, I ended up going to college. And as you can imagine, like learning a different culture, language, the environment, and everything. And then going into undergrad, I didn't know anything about college, or to me, I was always taught that, okay, you go to school, you take classes, and you're done. But opportunities, that was something like I was not aware of. So I became part of the Ronald E. McNair program. And through that, that was my first time having a mentor. And that mentor changed my life.
That's
I would
amazing.
say.
That's amazing. I want to stop you right there because I don't know if a lot of people know what the Ronald E. McNair program is. If you talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so it's a first generation program. It's a summer program. Usually it's a summer program, but you can prolong it and do research furthermore with the same mentor. But the idea is to provide a space and learning. I like how to actually do research through this program, and it's based for first generation students, underrepresented minority. So it's a really I highly recommend young people to look into that. It was definitely life changing program for me. And it was very interesting. Like one of my professors, she was like, I think you should apply for this program.
Wow.
And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And that's how I just kind of got into the McNair program, which I didn't really was thinking of applying for. Through that program, I got this mentor who not just made me realize my full potentials when I didn't understand myself, or I didn't have any like trust in my abilities, I would say. I was very shy, very naive. I just focused on classes and that's it, because that's what I was told what to do in my country. Just take classes, like opportunity was not something that we were talked about. So my mentor, I till this day I say that like I want to be like him.
Oh, wow.
I want to be that mentor, because he was somebody who really helped me understand myself better, not just the scientific aspect of it, but also he was like always asked me deeper question about who I am.
Wow.
And like, I don't know how he was doing it. And he never, could you not, he never told me to go to grad school.
Really?
Never told me to go to grad school, but he's the reason I went to grad school, because I wanted to be like him.
Wow.
And I was just, that was like such a turning point for me. I'm like, I want to be a person just by being who I am can help people guide to their path and helping them find their path. And like I remember like telling him like, oh, I'm applying to grad school. He's like you really want to do this? And I was like, yes, and I want to be like you. And he was like, oh wow, I'm glad it worked out for you, because I was trying, but I didn't want to tell you what to do. And I was like, whoa, that's the type of I really aspire that a mentor who kind of guides you in your own path, rather than telling you this is what you need to do, this is what you like, you finding your own path and your own curve. And that's something really inspires me.
Are you looking for a place to continue to grow and develop, especially in your leadership? How about connecting with others who feel the same way? Hi, I'm Paul Ferrandi, aka Incredible Paul, and I've got great news for you. The Incredible Paul community is for people who desire to become the most incredible versions of themselves. The community is for individuals who are goal-driven and action-oriented. This community is dedicated to leadership and personal growth, especially in going deeper in your career, starting a business, or developing a business. Join me in becoming the most incredible version of yourself. Go to incrediblepaul.org/community to join the waitlist and sign up. INCREDI Paul.org/community. Join the waitlist. I can't wait to see you there.
And till this day, like I mentor a lot of students. And when I do that, I try to find their own potentials and kind of guide that instead of telling them. Sometimes I do have to tell them like, hey, I think research might be a path for you or whatever. But overall, I want to guide them on their own path rather than formulating that for them, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's a good method.
Yeah, that's really powerful that he didn't even tell you to go to grad school. And even when you said you were going to grad school, he's like, are you sure? So that, I think that's really powerful, that what you said there as far as a mentor that guides you, because it's really easy as a mentor, because you've most likely been in their shoes before, to be like, well, you need to do this, watch out for this, don't do that, don't even try that. But the fact that he took the time to speak to what you were trying to do in education and professionally, but also I know you mentioned like asking the deeper questions. I think that balance is really crucial for mentorship.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And something that he always used to say, having a clarity of thoughts and expression. And I didn't understand as an undergraduate student. I'm like, I have no idea what this guy's talking about. And he constantly said this to me. But the more I got into like grad school and now as a postdoc, now that when I write grants, I'm like, that's exactly what I need. Clarity of thoughts and expression. If I'm not clear about my path, if I'm not clear about the signs that I'm trying to convey, then forget it. Like, I am not going to be able to sit with somebody and talk to them about it or sell the idea. And I was like, wow, like he's been telling me all along without really telling me. So that was the start for me, and I was just like, okay, I gotta do this. Like I'm in. I'm this is something I'm passionate about, and that has been driving me despite of all the challenges that has been coming along the way. I think that's something that's been a driving force for me to keep going.
That's really good, and that's really what mentorship is for. Is to help you along your path to keep building upon where you want to go. So I know you mentioned like the Ronald E. McNair program was what really catapulted you into mentorship and going into grad school. When you were coming into undergrad, what were your kind of your thoughts about what you wanted to do, or did you know what you wanted to do?
No, not at all. So as I said, I was 2 years in US, and within those 2 years I had to apply for college, which I didn't know. My parents were under like survival mode. They never really talked to us about college. They just like, okay, you have to do school because that's why we came to this country for. But there was no guidance in that. So when I was applying to colleges, there were only 3 colleges I could apply for because they were close to my house. So I was not allowed to go farther. Like my mom said, these are the 3 schools that you're going to apply. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's what I have to do. And I just literally, I know this sounds kind of funny when I like even look back at after 10 years, I just checked the box biomedical engineering because I really like biology, and my mom, I really like mathematics, and my mom liked biology. She wanted me to become a doctor. Like, every Asian immigrant dream is to become a doctor. And because, and my mom, so I was like, okay, biomedical engineering sounds good. I had no idea. I did not Google it, and I just got in. So I just applied and I got in. And I remember the first semester, I'm like, I have no idea what my major is because I forgot.
Oh man.
I forgot what my major was. And because I was taking prerequisites, I was taking basic classes, I was not really going into major. And I remember like looking through the portal. I'm like, I really need to know what my major is because people are asking me right now. And I didn't know. And when I took my first introduction class, I was like, whoa, this is fascinating. And it was more fascinating to me because I come from a very conservative family, and going into school, I went to an engineering school, I went to a tech school, and there was just a lot of guys. I didn't even know about that cultural shock that I was about to get into. Like, that was something I didn't expect. Then when people around me are talking about like how there's lack of women in engineering, I was seeing it and I was like, wow, I was connecting dots. Like, I just didn't know. That's how naive I was when I got into undergrad. So when I took my first introduction class, I was like, whoa, this is fascinating. I really want to help. Like, this is kind of like getting close to being a doctor. I'm like helping people to find better approaches. Because we talked a lot about like surgical equipments and things like that. So I was like, oh, this is good. But it was hard. It was really hard. There was, in the beginning, I was like, okay, maybe I should quit. I don't like being around men all the time. Like, my classes were heavily men. But I just really fell in love with my initial courses that I took with biomedical engineering, and then I started doing research, and I was like, oh wow, like I'm a person of faith, and I was like, whoa, this is like God really put me into this without me knowing. And that's how I've been kind of seeing this journey, that he really put me in the path without me realize. Like, he knew that I didn't know what I was doing, so he was guiding me through it. He was pushing me through it. I didn't give up. I ended up graduating in 4 years, even though I was a little behind because I took a lot of prerequisite courses because a lot of my friends were already taking high-level mathematics when I was not, and I was already a little bit behind. But I ended up doing it in 4 years, and I look back at it now, and I'm like, wow, like there was a higher energy. Like, if you talk more about God, like there's a higher energy that's really really helped me drive because I had no idea what I'm doing. And if I didn't know back then, I had no idea. I could only imagine now that I have a clarity in my life a little bit of like where I want to go. I can only imagine like how much I can accomplish with that clarity. And also, I always looked at as like somebody was holding my hand and pushing me through and put me into this. Then I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah, no, that's really powerful. I'm a person of faith as well. I definitely agree that God orchestrates things that we don't always see or don't always understand. And it works out for our good in the end if we're able to trust God in it. So that's
Yes, gotta
go,
have a faith.
go ahead.
I was saying this, you just gotta have a
Yeah.
faith that you are gonna be all right in the end of this. And somebody is helping. If you are already there at the door, that means you were meant to pass that door. So I truly believe that, like, if I made it there, that means I was meant to be there. And if I didn't make it there, that door or that place was not for me. And, like, it's been like a really driving force for every place that I either get into or not get into, that, and it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I've heard it said a few times that rejection is redirection, because it's really easy, because I talk about failure and resilience all the time, that failure is part of the process, rejection is part of the process. And just because you're rejected doesn't mean that you can't be doing something else. And it doesn't mean that you can't come back to that later. It just means that this moment in time, it's not for you. But that doesn't mean that you should quit.
Absolutely. Oh, I so deeply agree with that. I tell myself every time I get rejected, I'm like, wow, what's new for me then? If this is not it, then what is the next thing for me? And I kind of have like changed that mindset as well, because in academia, as you would know, like, you have a lot of failure. We have a lot of failures. And if I would keep getting stuck on these closed doors, then I'm never going to find that new door. So I always like, okay, what's new? I gotta move on. Like, I'll give myself 2 hours to cry about this. Gotta move on. Like, find this next door, because it is a redirection, right? Like, it's a redirection, so we gotta go to the other side. But yeah, I have an example about this. Your audience. So I was in grad school and I applied for these 2 fellowships and I didn't get it. I was really, really, really sad. I'm like, God, I prayed for this. I really wanted it. I knew it was going to be great for my career. Why didn't I get it? And my mom told me, she's like, maybe there's something better out there for you. And I was like, what can be more better? These are like top-notch fellowships that I applied for. Didn't get it. Within 6 months, I met she was a CEO of this foundation, and I worked on Heartwells before. I met her randomly, and I asked her, hey, she was promoting about this research grant for PIs, and you have to have a PhD. And I asked her randomly, because I was getting a sticker from her table, and I randomly asked her, hey, can I apply for this grant? And she's like, do you have a PhD? I'm like, well, I'm a PhD candidate. And she was like, you have to have a PhD for this. And I was like, well, I don't, but I want to apply. She's like, okay, I'll think about it. Let me get back to you tomorrow. Why don't you shoot me an email? And I was like, oh, yeah. I sent her an email. She thought about it. And she told me, Sana, why don't you apply? I'll make an exception for you. And I got my own funding for 2 years. Saw like 100%, like there was no percentage that went to the university. It was 100% funding that I got just to pay myself and my work, 50%.
Wow.
So I got a grant. There was an article about it, like how a PI grant that was given to a PhD candidate. And I got it for 2-year renewal. And every time, like the first time that I got it, my mom was like, isn't this the best thing? And I was like, it is. It's better than a fellowship. Yeah. Fellowship only pays for your stipend, but this is paying me to do science. Like, I had so much privilege. I was buying things because I'm like, okay, I can do this experiment now because I have so much privilege. And it was $30,000 just to do science per year. And it was incredible. Like, so it really changed my mindset to every time I thought this was something good for me and I didn't get it, I'm like, no, there's something much better. When something is taken away from you, something better comes your way that is good for you, good for your path. And that kind of, when that thing happened in grad school for me, I was like, yeah, like, I gotta have that mind switch, a much faster pace rather than like dragging that sadness for a really long time, that it really is about that mindset that when you don't get something, there's something better out for you.
Are you wondering what's next? Has everything you tried failed? Or maybe you just feel stuck? Then coaching might be right for you. The coaching relationship is a relationship totally centered on you. If you're tired of running on the hamster wheel of life and want to start to see results, reach out to Incredipal for help. So what are you waiting for? Go to incredipal.org/coaching, INCREDIPAUL.org/coaching, or at I am Incredipal on all my socials. Or you can click the link in the bio for your free coaching session. I want to make sure you become the most incredible version of yourself. Mindset is so huge. I would say mindset is really almost everything, because we can't control what happens to us. We can only control how we respond to it. And life is just full of responses. And I want to really highlight like what you just said about that. As a PhD candidate, you got a grant for PIs, or for those who are not in the research space, for principal investigator. So someone that is leading the research. So someone that already has a PhD, is more established, is usually when they get those grants. And you got that as a PhD candidate. That is absolutely incredible.
Yeah. And it was because I took a responsibility, because I was the first person, and I took a big responsibility on myself that I have to do my best, because I want another person to get this grant too. I want, if somebody again would approach to them, then they would say, we had a good example, so why not give it a try again? So I took a very big responsibility, and I wrote really good progress report. So when I was graduating, the foundation reached out to my graduate school, and they wanted to create an actual funding for PhD candidates to apply.
Wow.
So now it's like it's a regular based, yearly based funding that they give out every year. And it's been 3 years since I left, and they have had 3 cycles. And I was genuinely like really happy with the fact that it created a chain, and it's going to impact not just my graduate career. It impacted other people's as well. And I think it will open a lot more doors if you have certain opportunity like this. So it's really like and it also came down to like, you have to ask. If I never asked that question to that lady back then, it would have never happened. So you gotta ask for those opportunities. A lot of times you're not gonna get just by sitting around. You have to like really be active about it and getting it.
Yes, asking is so huge. And did you say, I want to make sure I heard it right initially when you said you asked her about that, but you're initially going to get a sticker at her table? Is that what you said?
Yes. Yes. So it was like a fair, and I wanted a sticker because they were a hard foundation, and I really wanted a sticker for my table.
Oh, that's absolutely remarkable. And what you said about asking is so huge, because a lot of times we don't get things because we self-reject. So the other person hasn't rejected us. And it's kind of a defense mechanism, is that we don't want someone else to reject us, so we reject ourselves first. But what we don't realize is that there's so many opportunities that are lost because we don't ask. So there's a podcast episode I had, a previous episode I had with Jody Mayberry, and he talked about this: asking more, offering more. He's a podcaster. He does stuff in the National Park Service. He does a lot of things in podcasting now. And he talked about the only reason why he even got into podcasting or got deeper into podcasting was he asked the Lee Cockrell, who did a lot of stuff with Disney World. So he was the CEO of Disney World for years. He reached out to him to have him on his episode. And at that time, he was fairly new to the podcast game, and he just did stuff in the natural parks. But what he didn't know is that Lee Cockrell actually had I think it was a sister-in-law or sister who was really into the parks world. So when he reached out, he's like, oh, I love this stuff. But you would never have known that, never got that opportunity. And that was, I think, 10 plus years ago. And now he does a lot of speaking engagements. Lee Cockrell travels the world with him, manages a lot of his developmental sessions. And that was just from asking.
Yeah. All you have to do is ask. I once read this quote and I would never forget it. It's been 12 years since I've read it. And it was in November 2009, I think, 9 or 10. It said, "You don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate."
Wow.
And it's stuck in my head that I am not going to get it without asking. I'm not going to get it. I have to reach out. If I want something and I have a clarity of why I want it, I'm going to get it because the universe is going to conspire for me to have it, Like, that's how I see it. I will make it happen because I have a clarity of what I want. And I will ask me wrong people or correct the right people, and I will make it happen, So you have to have that mindset, and that keeps you going. As you said earlier, like, the mindset is so important in this to really help you navigate that. Otherwise, it's so much easier to just sit back and be like, I'm not going to make it, so I'm just going to sit and do nothing about it,
That's really good. Just the overall mindset that we keep coming back to. I also want to take a step back because I know you were talking about biomedical engineering and how you, like, with a lot of immigrant families, you so Asian immigrant. I'm a Nigerian immigrant, and there's this running joke for Nigerians. I think it might be similar for Asian immigrants that you're either a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, or a disappointment. So that was something this is a joke. My parents were not like that, but I ended up studying engineering. So I'm wondering, as you got into engineering, I know you said it's a male dominated field. And how did you navigate that? Or were there times that I know you kind of felt like giving up sometimes? What was the catalyst to keep you going?
As an immigrant, you're not allowed to give up. That's how mindset I had. I have to suffer through this. That's how I felt in the beginning. If I would fail, if I would drop out of college after 2 years, that would mean I failed my parents for moving to this country when they barely spoke English, when they spent all their entire money to come to this country, So it was always, I feel like sometimes I still have that, like, I cannot fail. Like, now I'm much better at, like, navigating that aspect, that I'm allowed to fail. I'm allowed to take a break or whatever. It comes with a lot of self-reflection, but early on, I couldn't. I just knew I had to suffer through this, and I had to work twice as hard as people around me because, as I was saying, like, I didn't have that background that a lot of my friends had. And engineering is hard.
Yes.
Engineering's so hard. It's so hard. It's not just something you memorize and you show up to an exam and you finish it. No, if you're like, it's so hard. It's really a critical thinking degree, pretty much. So in the beginning, when I was around these, like, heavily men dominated classes, I was very intimidated, and I was already a very shy person. So I was intimidated. I did not ask questions. I would go to my professor's office hours. I would never ask that question in class because I was just scared. And not until my 3rd or 4th year, when I started giving research presentations, I somehow built that confidence in me. When I was giving those research presentations, when I was out there talking about science, I think that gave me a power. It made me realize that education and just public speaking kind of gives you a lot of courage. And that has been something that really kind of navigated that for me. And that's how I ended up doing my PhD in biomedical engineering as well. And by that point, I was not intimidated by men anymore. I feel like I intimidated men at that point. It's a joke between my
Oh
friends.
yeah.
But I was just not
Mhm.
afraid. And honestly, as an immigrant, you're always like exactly how you were saying, like you're either a lawyer, doctor, or embarrassment to your
Mhm.
family, right? We had that similar thing, and I was always compared by my cousins or my family members how they're doing. If you didn't
Mm.
make it to that,
Mhm.
or if you didn't go up beyond that, like you, what are you doing with your life? But you don't know what you're
Mhm.
doing, right? And so I had that so much that I just stopped comparing myself to anyone. I'm like, I'm on my own journey. I'm not gonna compare myself to anyone. I'm just gonna become a better version of what I was before,
Mhm.
and I am competing with the person who is gonna be.
Mhm.
That's what I inspired to be, and that's something I till this day I like. Now that I work at Harvard, like everybody's just so incredibly smart there. Like it's like they just have so much like their records are just there's not these are not normal people. I think like they just have so many
Mhm.
opportunities that and I don't compare myself with them. I'm like I just have to become a better version of who I
Mhm.
am, where I came from. I have to remember that and aspire to be whatever I want to
Mhm.
be. I'm not on somebody else's journey. But it's been challenging. I'm not gonna lie. Like being around men, but navigating that, I I have no problem at this point. I'm okay with being around them. I'm completely okay with
Yeah. No,
that.
I could definitely
Yeah.
understand that, like what you said, like the pressure for being an immigrant, and depending on your parent, it may not always come directly from your parents. Like they're not intentionally trying to do it. It's just what, like you mentioned, like especially for you, you said you came to United States 2 years before you went off to college. I came when I was 4 years old, so it definitely looked a lot different. But the main purpose for you is that want to bring you here, get a good education, be successful. So that's a lot of pressure. And then coming into engineering and
Mhm.
biomedical engineering, and so for you to be able to navigate that and push through. And I also really like what you mentioned about that you kind of transformed into, instead of being afraid of failure, to embrace it more as more of the process, because it's really hard to feel like, oh, I don't want to fail, I don't want to be a disappointment to my family, I don't want to let everyone down. That can bring a lot of mental and emotional stress on yourself. But the fact that you recognize that, like I know you mentioned the self-reflection, I'm huge proponent on self-reflection and coaching and all the stuff in the mental health space, because we you don't know what you don't know about yourself sometimes, and until you yeah, were you about to
Yes.
say something?
And I said yes. I
Yeah, so
agree.
you have to take the time to self-reflect. And also part of that is like talking to people around you, because there are blind spots that we have that we don't understand. And until someone tells us about our blind spots and we acknowledge it and do something about it, those two things have to come together for anything to start to change and move forward.
Yeah, you have to find your crowd
Mhm.
and your people, and you have to talk about what you're facing, be vulnerable with them. And I think having that in my life has really helped me to be vocal about it. I'm like, oh wow, I'm not the only person who's been going through
Mhm.
this. There are so many other people, and we share the same thing. Yes, can we fix it? Maybe not, but can we talk about it and learn from it and be very conscious of it? Yes. Um, and that has something that's been keeping me going. One thing I also want to mention, it's so interesting because as an immigrant, your parents most of the time don't know what you're doing.
Mhm.
And they like my parents till this day, they know like they don't really understand what a
Yeah.
postdoc is.
Yeah.
And like they don't understand. Even when I was in grad school, they're like, when are you graduating? 4 years, no? And I'm like,
Baby.
it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. I ended up graduating in 5 years, and they were
Slow.
in the pandemic, and they were like, "Why did it take 5 years?" And they wouldn't understand. They were put like
Mhm.
it was a lot of constraints that would go with
Mhm.
that, and they don't understand. So you really need to find your
Yes.
crowd, like people who are in the same journey as you, and just talking about it, just normalizing that that's their things that you cannot fix, because it's just it's always going to be there. Like I'm not trying to fix my parents, and I'm like, let me teach you everything that I'm doing right now, how I'm going, where I'm going, and everything. Like I I've kind of like put that on side and not take that personally. Anytime that would come to me.
So that's really important to get to that stage, because yeah, like we mentioned already, like STEM is hard, engineering I think is harder, just from the other people in STEM telling me that engineering is harder, and I haven't experienced it as well. And so they're not always going to understand, and just being patient with them and trying to just get them to a place that they can understand somewhat. But yeah, like what you mentioned, like 5 years is, I think that's really like the minimum for PhDs. Like if you get it under 5 years, it's like, I think it's more so luck than anything if you get it under 5 years. So, and that's just something that most people don't, if you're not in that space, you don't understand it. So.
Mm-mm. Like, no, it's it's been interesting. And I actually, when I was in grad school, I switched advisor after 3 years. So I pretty much got my PhD in 2 years.
Wow.
But my parent, even at that point, I wanted to give up after 3. I'm like, I'm not doing this. I went to Florida. I'm from New Jersey. I don't want to live that far anymore. But my mom was pretty good at. She was like, no, you're not giving up. I'm not having you back in this house until you finish this. That's what she said. She's like, no option. I know she meant it in a good place, but I'm like, whoa, okay, I cannot give up. So I really pushed myself. I worked really hard for those 2 years too. I was already like in the paperwork, I was already far ahead, but I just had to do the research and get out of there. But it was hard. And then on top, I was still when are you graduating? I'm like, I just switched an advisor.
Yeah, you're starting over.
But they didn't understand things. Yeah, they didn't understand those things. So, and I'm like, I understand that. It's hard.
That is very impressive that you are able to switch advisors after 3 years and still graduate, get your PhD in 5 years. That's like unheard of. I don't know how you did that.
I did not take a break. I worked 7 days. Yeah, it was toxic way of doing things. Wow. I would not go back and do that, but I worked. Yeah, I would not go back.
Fair enough. You learned from it. But yeah, I know we talked a lot about your past and getting to where you are now, but I want to learn more about what you do as a postdoc at Harvard and at the Boston Children's Hospital, about what your research is, like as far as you can share, and like what kind of your day-to-day looks like.
Absolutely. So as I said, I was doing engineering, but while I was doing engineering, I realized I became very fascinated with cells, because I always when I was taking these classes, and I was always like thinking about cells, like how they can sense and change things, change their environment. It's like me sensing something as a human and changing my environment, right? What are the forces that are coming at me to change this? And that was something like towards the end of my PhD, I was like, okay, I need to understand the sensing, how the cells can sense and change that. And that's when I was looking more into this, like endothelial cells are the ones that really sense, because they're the ones that align by the vessel wall, like a blood vessel wall. They're aligning, and they sense, and they keep things in a very precise manner with different forces and contraction and all that. So I decided to apply for a vascular biology department. So all the people that I work with, they are not engineers, they're vascular biologists. So it's been a really big learning curve for me, but I really want to get different type of training as much as I could. So when I have my own group, I can have a very multi-dynamics research projects and things like that. So with the vascular biology department, I work with this professor. Her name is Joyce Bischoff. She's had her lab for 30 years. She's a very a well-known person, very well established in the field. So the disease that I work on is called Sturge-Weber syndrome. I don't know if you've seen patients with port wine stain. So they have these lesions on their faces that come as a birthmark in the beginning of their when they're born, but over the period of time, it becomes very aggressive. So this is just a facial deformity that they get. There's no mortality related to that, but these same patients can also have in the brain as well, and because of that, they could get seizures.
Wow.
So they have a lot of neuro disorders, and they could also have it in the eye. As you can imagine, if it's by the face, it's in the eye. So they could have blindness as well. So that's a disease I work with. And I became very passionate about it because there's just nothing much known about it. And it's so intricate, going back to cells, how a one tiny molecular switch can cause all this to happen. Just one, little one, R to Q, which is these two proteins, it just switched. Instead of making this R, ended up making this Q protein, and then it just causes this, I'm very fascinated by how biology works, how this little tiny intricate thing can cause such deformity, not just in the face, in the brain as well. So my goal has been in the lab and these are enlarged vessels. We could look at it, histology, and Boston Children's Hospital has the largest number of these patients that we come in. So we get tissue specimens, we can get brain specimen, and they're not that consistent. They don't like to do a lot of surgeries. As you could imagine, these are children. You can't really do surgeries. So they're trying not to do surgeries on these patients. And there's no drugs, nothing right now. And there's a lot of unanswered questions. So my goal has been to really look at how this single point mutation is causing with respect to the flow. You could imagine it's a blood vessel, so it's a flow dependent, how cellular interactions are happening. These are leaky blood vessels. So I am really interested in looking at how does the leakage happens, because you can imagine if the blood goes to the other side, then it's causing a lot of other issues. So I've been very interested in looking at that. So I've been looking at from many different dynamics. And over the period of time, as an engineer, I want to create better models. I want to create better models to study multicellular levels, because right now in vascular biology field, they look at one single cell layer. They don't incorporate other cell types, but our bodies are very intricate, very complicated. So that's why that's something I want to do in my lab when, hopefully one day. That I want to create better models. I want to study more complex models, combining my engineering, but now that I have vascular biology aspects, I want to study from developmental aspect, because I really do think if you understand how the normal behavior works, then we'll be able to understand diseases better. We'll be able to target better. We can't just look at a single cell type and say, okay, this drug would work. No, you never know how the other cells are going to respond, how the other complexities are going to happen. So that's something I'm very interested in. And that's something I do. Besides that, I write grants. I do a lot of DEI work at my work. That's awesome. I actually, with one of my colleagues, we started this special seminar series where what we do is we invite scientists from other underrepresented countries. Wow. So our goal is to invite people whose science, they do similar amount of science, similar type of science, but they don't get recognition. They don't get highlights. Wow. So we've had from South Africa and one from Brazil, and we're still lining up other speakers. So we have a lot of support from the department, and we're very interested in that. So that's something I do with the DEI within my department. I'm also part of this journal called eLife. It's a scientific journal. They publish different aspects of science, and I work as an ambassador for them. So I created a Women in Science Sense of Belonging circle. Basically, I invite women from different aspects of life. I'm very focused on early career scientists, because I really want to about the pressing issues that they're
Yes.
facing, what it means for them to belong in science, because I oftentimes felt like I didn't belong there. So that's the type of conversation I've had, and it's been a lot of success leading those panelists. And with that same group, I also invite people that talk a lot about mental health issues in academia. So we talk a lot about like the stigma around mental health. So that's a lot of stuff that I'm interested in. That's something besides science. I think I'm a bit advocate for that, and I want to keep working on those things. Because science does excite me, but it's not like you get results every
Yes.
time. So it's not like success rates are really high. So I need to keep myself motivated. I need to like do other things that really like drives me. And that's why I've been like interested in doing different
Wow.
aspects.
First thing I'll ask is, how do you
Yeah.
find the time to do all these things? That's a lot of different things.
Honestly, I'm so passionate that it just doesn't seem like I'm putting in work, if that makes
You're
sense.
enjoying it.
Yes, I'm really enjoying that aspect of inviting people, talking about certain aspects. Like I'm really passionate about it, so it doesn't feel like additional thing. It's like, oh wow, it's a great opportunity. I want to do this. I'm passionate about this.
Absolutely. No, I can definitely understand that. I know you know about Knowledge STEM, and the work we do is something I'm very passionate, along with the stuff I do with Incredipaul and then working full time. So I definitely understand that the stuff that you're passionate about doesn't feel like work, because you see the impact you're making, the connections you're building, like people who maybe didn't feel like they could do something or where they're making a difference, and you have that impact, and it just continues to fuel you. That's incredible.
Yes. It's honestly, it's like there were people who created opportunities for me, and I just want to give back. I want to create opportunity. I want to create paths. And through this, I'm not saying that I'm just creating opportunities for others. I'm creating opportunities for myself as well. Like I'm building new relationships. I'm meeting new people. I'm just paving the path for myself as well. But at the same time, I'm inspire. I hope to inspire others. I hope to inspire those little Sanas out there that didn't believe in themselves to believe in themselves. You know, that has been my goal, and that's what keeps me going. Honestly,
That's very good. And I can tell how passionate you are. It just comes out as you talk about it. Like I mentioned, when I heard you speaking on the panel, I was like, I can tell this is a lot more that you can share about your story and what you're doing. And that's why I really wanted to have you on the show, because there's oftentimes when we're going through STEM or engineering, like you mentioned, it's hard. It can be difficult. And like what you really mentioned at the very beginning, that mentorship piece is absolutely critical, because what you mentioned is that you didn't necessarily know what you wanted to do, and your mentor didn't even tell you what to do. I think that's because sometimes people are hesitant to be mentors. They're like, oh, I don't know if I can mentor. Like, how could I be a mentor? But just being there for the person, for the student, or the person who's just coming up behind you and asking questions and just being an example by you walking your path can be the best form of mentorship.
Yes. And that's what I inspire. I aspire to be that mentor, to be there for a young generation, help them pave their own paths, and inspire, like push them. I do not want to set them back, because there are a lot of people out there, a lot of mentors. They set you back, and they're like, "You're not. This is not for you." Like, I do not want anyone to be told that. I want them to try, fail. If that's what's like that's if that's gonna take, fail. That's okay. But put your step forward, instead of somebody telling you that this is not for you, or like, yeah.
That's really important. But we're about out of time, and that went by so fast. But I want to make
Wow.
yeah.
Realize.
But before we wrap things up, is there anything else about your story or about like what you do that you want to share with the listeners before we wrap things up? Just opening up about you or your story.
I do want to mention one thing that as you were talking about the panel that I was on a few months ago, the question that came up, and it was something that has been making me think a lot, and it's how do you be a woman of faith in academia? How to be a person of faith and saying that you believe in God. Like also like I wear a headscarf that represents exactly who I am, hopefully. And it came up in that and at that conference a lot, like how to do that. And that's something I'm like, whoa, I've never really questioned it because I've just been, as I've kind of found my voice, I've just been so authentic to myself and who I am, unapologetically saying that, yes, I believe in God. I am a Muslim and I carry myself as a Muslim 24/7. I'm not just, like, yes, we pray 5 times a day, which also came up at the conference as well, that we're Muslims, not just when we're fasting, but we're Muslim throughout. I'm a Muslim throughout the year, and I fast and I pray, and I'm unapologetically myself. And I really hope that me being my most authentic self would allow others to be their most authentic self and bring their whole self on the table every time they get there, instead of hiding. Like, I don't hide. If I need to pray and there's a meeting that prolonged beyond time, I take time. I tell them I have to take 10 minutes out. I'm going to go pray and come back because God comes first to me. And I hope that the young generation out there who are scared to be their full self, being authentic about their belief, and who they are and what's really important for them, I hope they continue to inspire. I hope they push themselves to do that. And I hope me being who I am helps other people to get out of that uncomfortable zone that they're in about this. And that's something I constantly have been thinking about since that conference, that like being my most authentic self, that's what I need. Instead of like trying to be somebody else. And that means I'm a Muslim woman in science. And I have to continue to be that way, so that I can inspire other people to be that as well.
I really love that. Authenticity is huge, and I feel like we're losing more and more of it because we're in the TikTok and Instagram generation where people are doing things for the sake of views and likes, and people aren't always being themselves. And I know that it creates a lot of comparison. Comparison is a thief of joy. And so when you see people who are authentic, you're gravitated toward that. So that's how I was gravitated toward you. I was like, I need to reach out to you. And I know that you are definitely inspiring students and several people because you inspired me. And so I think that's really impactful what you're doing, to be your whole authentic self and not to hide who you are as a Muslim American woman in STEM who's an immigrant as well. So all of those things coming together, and what we do with DEI, representation matters. So a lot of times, like, you can talk about the different stuff you do, but people understanding who you are as well allows them to see themselves in you, and that they see you as an example. And so I think that's really admirable, and I love it so much. And I'm glad you brought that up. Wish we got to it earlier. I'm glad you brought that up.
No, thank you for giving me the space to talk about that. I think
absolutely.
Thank you.
So we're out of time, but I want to make sure people know how to connect with you, whether it's on socials or email, however you want people to connect with you. And then for those listening, you can see it in the show notes. And then if you're watching, you'll see it come across the screen on YouTube. But yeah, just however you want people to get connected with you, talk about mentorship, imposter syndrome, being an immigrant, whatever it is, you can share that.
Yes. So you can connect me on LinkedIn. My first and last name, SANA, my last name, NASIM on LinkedIn. And I do have a Twitter account. It's Sana Naseem 4. So do follow me, reach out to me, email me. If you like, just Google it, you'll be able to find my work email. It's sana.naseem@children's.harvard.edu. I would be so open to having more conversation on this with anyone who's willing to willing to open up and be vulnerable. And I'm always happy to be vulnerable and open and talking about this. So please reach out.
Absolutely. Well, it's been an honor having you on the show, Dr. Naseem, to share your story of being an immigrant coming to the United States. You're 17, going off to college, not really understanding what you want to do in college. But I would say most of us don't really know, or we think we know, and then we figure out, oh, this is what we actually should be doing. It's actually what to do. So I don't think your story is too different from most people as far as not knowing, but I really appreciate you being candid about that. And then also some of the pressures of being an immigrant and then being a woman in STEM as well, that you talked about that, how you navigated that and kept pushing through all the amazing, incredible work you're doing and in your postdoc at Boston Children's and Harvard Hospital, and how you just continue to push forward. You continue to mentor people, and you can continue to be incredible. So I hope for everyone listening that you are as inspired as I am from her story. Is her an incredible story. She's doing incredible things. And I hope that you can keep being incredible.
Be sure to rate and review this podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. We'll see you here next time. And be incredible. Incredible.